Did you know how to do all this, Bhante? Did you know how to do all this, Bhante? Aya? Aya someone? A different Aya? You see, just in the third Bhante, Aya Sudina?
I know who that is.
That's not our Aya, right?
No, it's a Sri Lankan Aya down in North Carolina, South Carolina. Oh, Isaiah.
Bhante, I can't hear you unless you've muted yourself.
After,
Oh, okay. You've unmuted yourself now. That's great. Bhante, I took your advice and I found the Dhammapada written by a monk. It's pretty good. Venerable Narada.
Narada.
Narada. Yes.
Yeah. I like his translations, one of the best ones. That was the first Dhammapada I ever received. He gave it to me as a gift in 1970.
Wow. So you knew him personally. You know him personally.
Yeah, well, he's passed away for 40 years.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, the footnotes are great. The clarification is on point.
Mm. And there's another translation by Acharya Buddharakita, which is also quite good.
Could you post that somewhere or maybe Prashant can post it so we can
Yeah, have the,
have the correct spelling of his name.
I mean, you can easily Google it in and probably get it, I suppose.
I'll post it, the link, Michael.
Thanks, Prashant.
Okay, friends, so we'll go ahead and start with reciting the Namo Tassa and the three refuges for those who like to join. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. So friends, welcome to this Wednesday evening Dhamma discussion and guided meditation. And this week we had chosen the sutta about the Dhamma para verse, about one who lives contemplating the delight in sensual pleasures. That person Mara overthrows like a strong wind blowing down a weak tree. And the opposite, one who lives contemplating or seeing the danger in being attached or addicted to sensual pleasures, then that person Mara does not overthrow. It's like a strong wind does not blow down a rocky mountain. So we can reflect on this verse, and see it even in our own daily life. We can see the strong pull and allure of delighting in sensual pleasures. And sensual pleasures basically means any of the delights that you get through your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind. And basically it means entertaining with desire, lust, greed, wanting to always thinking about what next pleasures you can get, or being overly attached to them. Because by doing that, one inadvertently probably winds up breaking some of the precepts, or if not, at least when you try to meditate, it's going to be one of the hindrances of sense desire that will prevent you from probably reaching deeper states of concentration. But especially in terms of the being lured and tempted to the sensual pleasures to the point of breaking the precepts. So the precepts really, of course, not killing perhaps, not many of you are going to do that, but perhaps telling some lies or stealing, or of course, sexual misconduct, intoxicating the mind, and so on. Anyway, it's fairly self-explanatory. So we had questions. A couple of people have written in questions about this. So I'm going to first try to explain, answer some of these questions, and then others after that. Then people can ask through the chat, write something down in the chat box. So his first question is, I'm interested to know about practicing with sustained energy for people who live with chronic illness and fatigue. So that verse, if it mentions that a person, who contemplates the dangers in becoming trapped or addicted by sensual pleasures, they will have, live with sustained energy to practice. And so anyway, this question is about how to sustain the energy for practicing. I guess it means especially for doing daily meditations, I suppose. But that's not the only form of practice. Even reading suttas, studying, of course, living by the precepts, one can do that even with, chronic illness and pain, I suppose. But the practicing the meditation, most people equate Dhamma practice with, practicing meditation. And of course, that's one of the main ways that we do train our mind. So how to sustain that energy for people who have chronic illness, pain, and fatigue. And how can practice be modified to compassionately take these concerns into consideration without falling into laziness and inactivity? And then the third part of this question or comment, they find that chronic illness, pain, and fatigue have one advantage of reducing the interest in contemplating delight in sensual pleasures and can help with restraint of the senses too. So for that person, he finds that advantage of reducing the interest can help with this restraint of the senses too. That's true. So anyway, it's true that a lot of people these days have chronic illness. And even if you don't have chronic illness, people have temporary or periodic illness, pain and fatigue. And it's true that it's very difficult to have energy when you're sick to meditate. So you have to try to modify the way that you meditate. And you may not have the energy to sit, straight up in a meditation posture. So, if you're used to sitting in a meditation posture, then try sitting in a chair. And if you can't sit up straight because of too much back pain, then, lean back on the chair. And if sitting all together is, too painful, then try a more standing meditation or walking meditation, and or for shorter periods. So at least you can try to do shorter periods of meditation, maybe a couple of 1 or 2 more periods of meditation, but a shorter one. And especially the M&Ms. So even the people with chronic pain, fatigue, or illness, they should be able to manage at least the M&Ms, where you stop once an hour and try to, even if it's focusing on that painful sensation, just try to understand that, okay, this sensation, it is painful, but it's not going to kill me, and try to, try doing the anapanasati. But usually if you have lots of pain, practicing breathing awareness may or may not help. But you could try doing some, even some very gentle, mild yoga stretches might help to alleviate some of that pain. So illness and pain are normally pretty much, one who is ill is going to have certain degrees of pain. And one can have pain, of course, not being ill necessarily, like a toothache or a headache or something. And the fatigue. Anyway, each person is going to have to find that out for themselves. And again, follow the middle path. The middle path should always be your criterion. So if you are experiencing, these chronic illness, pain, and fatigue, then you have to accept that. And you're right. You have to be compassionate for yourself, but without falling into laziness and inactivity. So that's why at least doing the shorter periods of meditation, even if it's just the M&Ms, even if you could, sort of faithfully do it once an hour. Of course, there's times when you may not be able to be doing that, but to stop for 1 minute and just come back and take a few deep, slow breaths. Anybody should be able to do that. There is absolutely no excuse, unless you're sleeping, that anybody couldn't stop and pause, even if you're in immense pain, and take a deep breath, or 2 or 3 deep, slow breaths. At least that's what I would recommend or consider a bare minimum of trying to at least do some kind of practice. And you find that if you pause for 1 minute and take a few deep breaths, maybe the pain will subside a bit, and I'll sit another minute. Sit another minute. You might be surprised at yourself. A lot of people, they sometimes use that pain as a kind of, well, since I have this, I can't do any practice, and they kind of self-defeat themselves. So you have to, because you'd be surprised at what can happen in the mind or body when you have this determination and I'm going to sit through this pain. And you sit and you say, I could actually do that. Okay. So it's better to try to still make the efforts rather than just writing it off blanket. Well, I have this illness and therefore I can't do any practice. So, but anyway, each person is going to have to find that middle path for themselves. Now, of course, okay. So those are what I would recommend. And of course, trying to somehow deal on the more physical level or medical level, and finding ways to try to reduce those, chronic issues and so on. Okay, question number 2. This other question. Whoever lives contemplating, this person, whoever contemplates a danger in sensual attractions with senses restrained, moderate in eating, full of faith, and sustained energy. So please help understand what is the sustained energy to practice. And when the Buddha said full of faith, what is meant by the word faith? So Of course, a sustained energy to practice would be as what I've already mentioned. If you can't, practice the way you might have practiced or want to practice because of the chronic issues or fatigue, it's not to give it up altogether. You've got to keep the door, toe in the door open a little bit by, as I mentioned, at least doing M&Ms and maybe reading Dhamma. You can get a lot of inspiration and faith just by reading suttas too. If you're chronically ill or energy, you can get tapes. Listen to tapes, recorded, recordings of Dhamma talks by so many Dhamma teachers. So what is the faith? That means knowing that it's faith in the Dhamma, basically. And of course, when you're experiencing these chronic illnesses, sometimes it's easy to lose that faith, and especially if you don't practice. That's the problem. See, these two things, they go hand in hand. The sustained energy to practice gives you faith, and not practicing, letting your practice slip and slide away because of that, then will allow doubts to come into the mind and to lose that faith. And it's the faith that sustains the energy. There's 5 spiritual faculties, and they're called faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. These are the 5 spiritual faculties. And the faith is the first one. And that faith means having faith in the Dhamma, that the Dhamma works if you practice it. And so on. And you get the faith as you practice, because as you start practicing precepts, as you practice moderation in eating, you practice the daily meditation, you will see the beneficial effects of that, and that is what makes your faith stronger. That it actually works if you practice it. So those two, that's how but the faith is there. If you don't have any faith, you're not going to practice. So that's why they usually go in that order. There's the faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or at least there's faith in the Dhamma, that it works, and the different aspects of the practice, like the Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, and all the other steps of the Eightfold Path. When you follow them, you see their beneficial effects. And the faith, the energy to practice what? Mindfulness. So mindfulness is the first stage of practice. Being alert and aware, we already know what mindfulness is. And that leads to concentration. The longer you sustain your mindfulness and letting go of distractions, then that develops your concentration. And the mindfulness supported by concentration, it gives rise to the deeper insights, which is the wisdom, the wisdom that comes through the deeper levels of meditation. So, but again, those first two are important, the faith and the energy. That's why the Buddha mentioned that in that verse. And then moderate in eating. What is moderate in eating? moderate eating is an everyday thing. Well, for some, for some it may not be. But anyway, now we all know that overeating is a big problem for so many people, or eating the wrong kinds of foods. And of course, there's many causes and conditions for that. I'm not going to go into all those. But it says our lifestyle today for the lay person who has a desk job eats more than his body needs, because the desk job makes the brain work hard. There's monotony. Even though those things could be true, still one can still make the effort not to do that. To overeat. So how does a person eat moderately according to the Buddha? Well, as you probably know, when the monastics, before monastics eat, the Buddha, there's a verse that before we start to eat food, we say, okay, I'm eating this food let me eat this food with mindfulness. And I'm taking this food as a medicine to give the body enough energy and the nutriments to keep it healthy enough and enough energy so it can sustain my life, but not to the extent of overeating and inducing the pains and problems connected with overeating. So you got to reflect on that. Tell yourself every time before you eat. And so that's one way the Buddha advised, at least the monastics would help to develop the moderation in eating. And I know for the average lay people that may not be very practical, or I know eating is one of the strong desires because we need to eat, right? But so it's a well-known fact, people overeat. So reduce your diet. Even now, doctors and dietitians and other people are talking about intermittent fasting. And that means where you reduce your intake of food to just a certain period of day, like a 6 or 8 hour period of day. You eat once or twice or 3 times, and then you give your body a rest. Now people say, well, I can't do that because I have this and this and this. And yes, there are these maybe other conditions, but people are always going to make some kind of reasons why they can't do it, whether it's real or imagined or I don't know. But anyway, so people can live perfectly well usually on eating in just twice a day, if they eat the proper foods, of course. But and also monastic life usually means that you're not running around at full speed and having to replenish that energy all the time. So this is all connected with the more meditative life. All the Buddha's instructions were given with the idea that people are going to be sort of following a more mindful, meditative, incorporating that into their daily life. Now, but we know that it is very difficult for people to practice. So what do they do? I don't know. I can only tell you what the Buddha advised, and people are going to have to modify it and try to practice the best that they can. There's no other magic pills. So the Buddha advised, like for eating, to stop eating a few mouthfuls before you would feel that kind of full feeling, and then drink a little water top it off afterward. But it's people can reduce the amount of food they eat, but it's all connected with all as well with the meditation and the other aspects of the practice. It's all tied together. You can't just piecemeal practice and choose, I'm just going to practice this or I'm just going to practice this. No. The Buddha devised the Noble Eightfold Path because all those steps are connected and interconnected and help to mutually support each other. The right view, the right intention, following the precepts, and then of course the meditation practice, moderation, and reducing the sensual desires. And of course food is one of those sensual desires. Now there's a simile. I know a lot of people, may not like to hear this story, but it's a very kind of well-known story in the Buddhist teaching about how to practice moderation in eating, mindfulness of eating. Is the story about the man and woman and their son who went on a journey across the desert. And the young baby died. And the parents then decided that, they would, in order for them to survive and make it out of the desert alive, they would have to eat the flesh of that child. So do you think that they're going to eat that child with delight? No. Very sparingly. Anyway, I know people are not going to like that, but that's an analogy the Buddha had given. Or it could be any other type of food that you may not like. You eat that very sparingly. Okay. Anyway, so that is what I have to say on those questions. Now, if anybody has some other questions, any other questions, I'll look at the chat box and see. Okay, there's that translation of Venerable Buddha Rakita, the link for that. Okay, here's a question. Is it okay to buy meat at the grocery store? Okay, this is a fairly common question that we get asked about, pertains to whether a Buddhist should be a vegetarian because they should be practicing non-killing. So, people have to answer that question for themselves. There's no absolute do's or don'ts. Now, the precept not to kill means directly killing the animal oneself. But now we can stretch that out. And if, people who do raise animals to slaughter and butchers and stores that sell it, they're doing that because there's a demand. And so even though you are not directly killing the animal, when you're adding to the demand, then indirectly, let's say indirectly, one could be contributing to the killing of animals, but it's not a direct karmic infringement in a technical sense. But, my own personal opinion is somebody who wants to be a Buddhist, they should at least reduce the amount of meat they eat. There's so many ways of getting protein and other things from other sources too. And also the idea of practicing metta, right? So we have that metta and loving kindness for all living beings, even animals and so on. So that could be part of one's motivation for becoming a vegetarian also. Of course, we all know that there are side effects of eating lots of meat and so on too. Okay, here's a comment on a verse. Full of faith and sustained energy, wouldn't gratitude to the Buddha as well for our Sangha teachers be the new faith, at least in this time and age? Well, it's true. The Buddha, of course, we can read his history and his life, and also of the other great monastics and monks and nuns who've practiced hard and attained enlightenment have passed away. But in the present moment, if you have teachers and so on who, that you can get inspiration and faith to practice with, then of course that's also part of that. And that's faith in the Sangha. So the Sangha are the living practitioners who are practicing well. I mean, that's why when you read the qualities of the Sangha, the order of the Buddhist disciples is practicing well. They have upright conduct. You've entered the right path. So we can get faith from that because we're living people too, right? And we've had to give up a lot of things, or monastics do, to lead that life, and spent many, many years studying. So, the idea, well, if they can do it, then maybe I can do it too. So we can get faith from those living examples, of course. Okay. Anybody wants to raise their hand to ask a question? Prashant, you see any yellow hands out there?
No, Bhante.
Okay. So if no one has any further questions, either on that topic or some other Dhamma question, we'll give another minute to see if somebody has a question. Okay, if there's no other questions, then